Patrick Odayafadi says, "Hi, Kiyan and Lucas. I hope you're both doing well. Even if one of Modric or Kroos leaves, I don't think we should be spending 150 million on Bellingham, assuming Asensio leaves on a free next season and Ceballos may have the same fate. What holes in the team would you fill next summer? Realistically, if we only brought in 2 or 3 players, who should we be targeting to continue with the philosophy of the club currently?"
Should we stick to the holes to fill next summer or the Bellingham thing? Because there are kind of 2 parts of this question, even though I realize that he's not actually asking a question about the Bellingham thing. But do you think it's worth to talk about it?
We can start with Bellingham, and then
I agree with Patrick. I wouldn't spend that much on Bellingham, and in fact, I think that, don't take me wrong, and it's going to be controversial, and again, don't take me wrong. I think it will actually be somewhat of a blessing in disguise if Real Madrid were to lose either Kroos or Modric next summer, because it would allow Valverde to play in the central midfielder and finally see what we got with Rodrigo as a key contributor on the right wing, week in and week out, as an undisputed starter. I still don't know what we have with Rodrigo week in and week out in that spot, to be honest. I know he gets a chance 1 every 3 games, and I don't think that's enough of a sample size for me to consider and to judge whether or not he's actually a great player or just a good player, just a solid player. I'm not sure. So even if it'll be very tough to lose both, either of Kroos or Modric, I think that it will allow Ancelotti to play Valverde as an undisputed starter on the central midfielder spot, and then definitely see what he has in store with Rodrigo as a right winger.
I guess it's hard to know where to start, but it's all related and connected. First of all, I think Bellingham in this market, when it broke out that Dortmund won 150 million for him, there was a lot of the predictable reaction of English tax and all that stuff. I think he's worth it, to be quite honest. Whether that's a general statement that I think he is worth 150 million in world football today, whoever signs him. The question of whether he fits at Real Madrid, I think, is a different discussion. I think in terms of Modric's replacement, which again doesn't really exist because Modric is a unicorn, because you have to change your style of play a little bit, whatever. Bellingham covers similar amount of ground on defense. He's a really good creator from his position. Can play right center midfielder. I actually think he fits. But you actually bring up an interesting point, I think, when you say, the combination of Asensio leaving plus missing out on Bellingham, for example, would probably bring Fede back to more consistent midfield minutes and probably poke you to sign somebody. And because naturally you've lost, in a weird way, you've lost 2 right wingers in that scenario. You've lost Asensio and Fede Valverde, right?
Yeah. Right.
So you kind of have to, in that situation, sign somebody. And I guess the problem is, you and I have talked about this before, the market is not really great next summer.
Yeah.
Having said that, probably new names that we're not thinking about will arise next summer that we're just either not on our radar or not on the world's radar or whatever. And so, but either way, that it'll be interesting. I don't hate the plan B of missing out on Bellingham and getting Fede Valverde back to the right wing. It's kind of like a minor detail, maybe it's a footnote, but also does Ceballos stay beyond next summer? Is something worth considering. If you lose Modric or Kroos, one of them plus Ceballos.
Plus Asensio, it's tricky there.
Asensio, Bellingham is also for the future. He's a great player.
That's the timeline. My problem with signing Bellingham for 150 would be that obviously that he would be starting right from the get-go, and assuming that both Kroos and Modric don't leave at the same time, like one of them stays, which we still don't know, but if one of them stays, we're talking about Valverde playing 1 full season on the right wing. It's going well for Real Madrid so far, but again, It's like it went well for Camavinga playing as a defensive midfielder during the last third of last season, but we still know that it's not his best spot, and the same goes for Valverde. So signing Bellingham would add that kind of trouble to Real Madrid's equation. So again, if Real Madrid miss on Bellingham, I think that they would still need to sign a right winger, because as you mentioned, you would have lost both Asensio and Valverde there, so you would either need a quality starter to be starting ahead of Rodrigo, or if you think that Rodrigo has enough to take on that role, you would still need a replacement for a backup role, saying, I don't know, Arribas, Brahim, or whatever.
I guess the reason I'm having trouble, and this is like, thank God I'm not in charge of anything at Real Madrid, it's such a hard decision to make, because, you know, when I look at Modric and Kroos, like, it's like almost every scenario is on the table for them. Like, how do you juggle this? There is one scenario where they both leave next summer. There is a scenario where they both stay next summer. There is a scenario where one of them leaves and the other one stays. If I had to guess, I don't know for sure, I think Modric will somehow outlast Kroos. Because Modric is a type of person who, first of all, he's not slowing down. And I don't really understand. I don't
think Kroos is either, by the way.
Behind it. And Kroos isn't either. But Modric also will probably just take the 1-year contract for the rest of his life, if he's given it. And I don't see the club not giving it to him again, based on how he's playing. Modric is probably the type of guy who'd be like, you know, just 1 more year for free. I'll stay. And the club will be like, probably okay. Like, I don't think Modric is that greedy with this stuff. Like,
and Modric seems to be willing to accept and embrace the fact that he's declining a bit more than Kroos. Kroos seems to be wanting to leave as a starter, if you will, or as a
at the top.
Yeah, not exactly at the top, obviously, because at the top would mean probably 2 or 3 years ago, where he was phenomenal, one of the best. I think he's dropped a little, but I think he's still at a very high level for sure, and undroppable for Real Madrid at the moment. But anyway, he definitely wants to live as a quality player and not coming off the bench here and there, whereas I think Modric seems to be willing to embrace this kind of role a little bit better. I think Kroos will not want to decline as an active player.
If you had to guess who leaves the club first, what a weird game to play, but like, who would you guess?
I still think Modric is important here. The fact that Kroos's contract hasn't been extended is a bit suspicious, but I still think Modric will probably leave earlier than Kroos, sooner than Kroos. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super interested to see how that unfolds.
I think both stays for next year. By the way, both stay.
If they both stay next year, and that's your only signing, that's your only window to sign Bellingham, it's a really tricky spot to be in. Yeah. It's really tough.
Yeah.
To juggle that, because your options are basically miss out on him possibly forever, or it's basically what happened with Haaland. It's like you either sign him now or miss out on him because of Benzema. You know, but also I suppose in another way, like Haaland, he's young enough that you could get him in a couple years or something.
And at the same time, I'm not a Bellingham expert or a Bundesliga expert. I don't think Real Madrid sees this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Like we have to get him, like Haaland, Mbappe. I don't think it's a life-changing scenario for Real Madrid. I don't think it's that big of a deal for the club. I don't think it's that kind of a priority.
And that's correct to me. Like, he's not a generational Haaland type player.
Exactly. So right? That's a correct assessment to be facing this situation, because you're going to face. I mean, Borussia Dortmund won 150, but if Premier League clubs are going to get interested, you have better expect the fee to reach a higher ceiling than that. Maybe not for the club, but signing bonus for the player, whatever. You can expect Premier League clubs to get involved.
Ananya Kumar says, hi, Kiyan and Lucas. I was curious, according to you guys, what changes has Ancelotti brought in compared to Zidane's last year? Even though Ancelotti was called as a continuation candidate tactically when he was hired, the results seem so very different. I would love to know your thoughts. Thanks for the awesome content.